Free agency rolls on. It's officially started, and let's get to it. Appreciate you joining the YouTube channel. I'm Cody Stoots, if you don't know who I am. We're talking about the Texans here on YouTube. Appreciate you checking in on the show. Comments are encouraged. Super chats go to the front of the line. Among the things we're going to get to is anything and everything that pops up from a breaking news standpoint. But we've also got a trade of a defensive tackle by the Houston Texans. What is Nick Caserio cooking up on that defensive line? A rivalry switch. Rivalry switch? That's not the way I want to say that. An AFC South wideout changes AFC South teams. The Texans had at least checked in on him. We'll talk about that and so much more. Your comments as well. Appreciate you stopping by live. Appreciate you stopping by after the fact. We've got a lot of stuff to get to. Throw the thumbs up button in there. We'll get to the comment section as we go along. Let's start with the Malik Collins news that popped up today. The Texans traded defensive tackle Malik Collins to the San Francisco 49ers, sending them a very productive and solid player for just a 7th-round pick, according to Adam Schefter. So a 7th-round pick for Malik Collins. Now, this cleared up some cap space for the Texans. It didn't clear up a tremendous amount. Texans cap has more kind of information and details. You need to follow him on social media. But he has more information and details about this. But this leaves the Texans without 2 starters on the defensive line. That's 2 defensive tackle spots that need to get occupied by players. Now, I say that they very well could just turn to the depth that they have at the defensive tackle spot right now. Like if Kurt Heinisch and McTelvin Agam and Khalil Davis and Fadukasi, which I think they just call him Foley. Like if that's the defensive tackle room, so be it. That's not great. But you would think with a move like this, Nick Caserio has got his eyes on somebody or something. And the name that everybody keeps talking about, we've talked about it here on the channel, we've been paying attention to it for the past couple of days, is this name. Aaron Wilson reporting that the 49ers officially releasing Eric Armstead, their defensive tackle, and that the Texans, the Bengals, and the Lions, among others, are interested. Now, this is what Eric Armstead was hoping for. He was hoping for a bunch of teams to be interested in him, and that's why he didn't take the pay cut from the San Francisco 49ers. He was set to make about $17-18 million this year from the 49ers, and he ultimately decided to not take the pay cut and not stay with the 49ers. And this guy was a fabric piece to what the 49ers have been putting together. He'd been with the organization for nearly a decade, 4-time Walter Payton Man of the Year Award nominee, 4 consecutive years in a row for the 49ers. His teammates, both long-term and short-term teammates, talked about how important he was to their development, how much they loved the guy, how much he meant to the team. And yeah, injuries kind of robbed him these past couple of seasons. He just played 9 and 12 games in the regular season in 2022 and 2023, and the production was down, 5 sacks over those 2 seasons. But come playoff time, and even playing through an injury, he was a beast. Last 3 seasons in the playoffs for the 49ers, playing a variety of defensive line spots. 3 games, 3 sacks, 3 games, 2 sacks, 3 games, 1 sack, 30 tackles over those 3 playoff runs that the 49ers had, 5 tackles for a loss. Like, the guy could ball and still has a lot of juice left in the tank. And as Johnny is pointing out here, DeMeco Ryans knows this guy. DeMeco Ryans knows what he's about. He's the type of defensive lineman that the Texans have hoped to add in their time since DeMeco Ryans got here. He's got a little inside-outside versatility to him. He does a lot of the dirty work on the inside, and I do wonder, you don't know for sure that you've got that deal in place if you're the Texans when you trade Malik Collins, but I do wonder if they had a strong indication of some of the defensive tackle options that they had, some of the guys that they could go to in replacing Malik Collins. And obviously Sheldon Rankins is a free agent. So the 2 starting defensive tackles from last year, they're out right now, and all you've got to show for it is a 7th-round pick. Do I love this move? In a box, I don't love the move. Collins is a productive player. He's traded for a 7th-round pick. He was a player that Nick Caserio had extended a couple of times. It's like in a box, I don't love the move, but this move is clearly setting up something else. So if this move leads to Eric Armstead, it makes a lot of sense. If this move leads to a safety that they really like, this move makes a lot of sense. But in a box, the Malik Collins deal is a little bit of a head scratcher. It didn't seem like he was unhappy. He was a productive player again, as I mentioned. So Collins out, TBD in. Okay, TBD in the defensive tackle spot. Again, it's not the worst thing in the world if they go with one free agent that's out there and the defensive tackles that they have now. Not the worst thing. Is there a better option? Would you like to have 2 names? Would you like to say Armstead and Rankins? Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to have Armstead and Rankins instead of, Kurt Heinisch and Folo Fatukasi. Fatukasi. He's just call him Foley. He's the Jaguars guy. I'll learn it by training camp, I promise. So Armstead's the name to watch. Eric Armstead's the name to watch, as Aaron Wilson puts it up here. 49ers officially released Eric Armstead today. Texans, Bengals, and Lions. And if I'm Eric Armstead and the money is close, the money's close, which of these teams do you want to play for? If the money is similar amongst these 3 teams, which of these teams do you want to play for? Do you want to play for the Cincinnati Bengals? Do you want to play for the Detroit Lions? Or do you want to play for your old defensive coordinator who you've spoken highly of pretty much every time someone's asked you about him, and play in Houston with Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter and Nico Autry and a couple of other guys and maybe a draft pick in the 1st round at the defensive tackle spot? Like, if the money's close, and I certainly understand if the money's not close, go where the money is. I'll understand that from Eric Armstead. But if the money's close, it's pretty easy to see that Eric Armstead would be the new defensive tackle of the Houston Texans. Pretty easy to see that Eric Armstead would be the new defensive tackle of the Houston Texans. What do you guys think about Armstead and the potential for him to be showing up? J-Rock says, I want to play for all 3, to be honest. Yeah, the paycheck's good. The paycheck's going to be good no matter where he goes. Armstead and Johnny Newton. And Johnny Newton is the defensive tackle from Illinois. He's a guy that would be pretty interesting. Trying to get some help here. Falakase. There we go. Okay, you made it a lot easier to say than the Pro Football Reference people. Sumo says Danico Autry can play DT. Yeah, he certainly can. Danico Autry is an option at defensive tackle. It gives you a heavy pass rush presence. John Crumpler, if you don't follow John on social media, on Twitter, John Crumpler was putting up some Danico Autry tape recently. So that was something. And Johnny pointing out that the inside move is certainly possible for Autry. And the trade comp for Collins is a head scratcher. I got to imagine that there was a little bit of doing the 49ers a favor there, a little bit of doing the 49ers a favor there because Malik Collins couldn't go for a 6th, the 5th, somewhere else there. Somebody didn't want Malik Collins for that number. So Devin asks, what about DJ Reader? I haven't looked at defensive tackles outside of Eric Armstead, who's now a free agent, as well as Sheldon Rankins, who's a free agent. And then DJ Reader is certainly one of those names. But let's pull up the defensive tackle situation in free agency and check out a couple of names. So, DJ Reader is the name we talked about. Sheldon Rankins is a name that we have talked about. And Quentin Jefferson played for the Jets, so there's some familiarity with the system. So that's a name to keep in mind, to think about there. Oh, is Linval Joseph still playing? I mean, I'd be interested if he was still playing. I don't know. He's older. Does anybody want Ross Blacklock back? No? Nobody for Ross Blacklock, huh? Okay, no Ross Blacklock then. No Ross Blacklock. So, yeah, look, Armstead's the name. Armstead's the guy. And that's who I would prioritize if I was the Texans. Obviously, the money compensation, the money comes into play. You can't gut the rest of your cap space for one guy when there's a couple of different things that you've got to figure out before the draft and then maybe even after the draft. So Armstead, if he's looking for the big money and there's somebody out there that's going to pay him, then okay, I could see where he's not on the Texans. But certainly if they're within the realm of what he's going to get paid, then yeah, it seems like an easy marriage to make. An easy marriage to make. Did Fletcher Cox retire? He did. And if he was playing, I would have a hunch that if he was playing, I would have a hunch that he would still be playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. Jim Davies, I very much appreciate the super chat. Thank you so much, Jim. He says, great job covering the Texans free agency these last 3 days. Thank you, man. It's fun. It's fun to come in here and talk with you guys and chop it up, and we can be very relaxed and hang out and just talk about everything that pops up, breaking news that pops up. We're going to talk about Calvin Ridley here in just a second. Okay, we're going to talk about Calvin Ridley here in just a moment. So how that affects the AFC South now and how that affects the Nico Collins conversation. But Jim, I appreciate the super chat, man. Thank you so much. It's very generous and very kind of you. Mob Squad 1914. If it came down to $3 million difference, would you cut Robert Woods to get where you need to be? So Caserio is very much don't cut, don't restructure until you absolutely have to. And I do wonder if they want to give Robert Woods the opportunity to get to camp and see what's there. You know, if he bounces back from last year, he plays better, if he showcases that he can be a rotational piece. You know, if you're looking at, let's just say this is the wide receiver room. Let's say Robert Woods looks pretty good. So you go Woods and Brown as the vets. You got Collins and Dell as the dudes. You got a rookie, and then you've got one spot left because they kept 6 wideouts last year. You got one spot left for, say, John Mechie or Xavier Hutchinson or something like that. So, yeah, would I do it? Yes. Is Nick Caserio going to do it? I don't know. He's very much in the don't cut, don't restructure unless you need to. And I know that from Texans Cap, who does a great job with the money aspect in the conversation of that. Mob Squad, I appreciate the super chat. Thank you so much. Major Payne says cutting Davis Mills would save $3.5 million. I do wonder if somebody is going to go and call the Texans about Davis Mills and get him into the room and just figure out what to do with him. He's not going to be a starter anywhere, but could he push a backup for the number 2 spot in a lot of places? Absolutely he could. Could he be a upgrade for a lot of teams in their backup quarterback spot? Yes, he could. The Texans have 4 quarterbacks, by the way. They have 4 quarterbacks. They have CJ Stroud, obviously. Case Keenum's under contract. Davis Mills is under contract. And Tim Boyle has a future reserve contract. So that is something to pay attention to. 4 quarterbacks. I don't believe they're going to carry 4 quarterbacks into training camp. Anthony Medina leads us into our next conversation point. He would like to make fun of the Tennessee Titans. He says, laughable deal by the Titans just to try to help their, air quotes, franchise QB. Their franchise QB. Anthony, I appreciate the super chat, man. Thank you. That's very generous and very kind. I appreciate it. Yeah, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the Calvin Ridley deal. If you haven't seen this, Calvin Ridley was down to the Patriots and the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Patriots and the Jacksonville Jaguars were in on Calvin Ridley, going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Calvin Ridley is signing with the Tennessee Titans. And he's going to be on the Tennessee Titans, and he's getting a 4-year, $92 million contract with $50 million guaranteed. That's a $23 million average annual value, 12.5 an average annual value of the guaranteed money. Obviously, how it works out and how they, kind of organize it and shake it out that way, and the cap hits and things like that. But this was a big, big signing in the AFC South. One, It puts two solid wide receivers on the Tennessee Titans. Hopkins is still very solid, and Ridley is sometimes good, sometimes solid. He kind of fluctuates a little bit. This is really expensive for a guy who's 29 years old. Didn't play as well as I believe a lot of us expected him to play this past year. Had some drop issues, but the Tennessee Titans are in a desperate mode to figure out if they have their guy at quarterback. The best way to figure out if you have your guy at quarterback is put a bunch of weapons around him and see what he's got. So with Ridley and Hopkins and their tight end, whose name I have trouble saying, and Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears, they're going to find out about Will Levis. Now, I feel like I know about Will Levis, as Rowdy Harper just called him, old Mayo fingers. If you don't know this, Will Levis puts mayonnaise in his coffee. So I feel like I know about Levis. I know he's not a franchise guy. He doesn't scare me. He's going to have weeks where, like when he started his NFL career, he goes out there and throws the ball real well and he has a big day. But there's also going to be weeks where he just looks totally inept and lost at the quarterback spot. He's Carson Wentz-esque, and not the good Carson Wentz that was almost the MVP for the Eagles, the bad Carson Wentz that played for like 3 teams after it. So it's to me a solid investment, because as soon as they figure out about Levis, if he's good, then they've got Calvin Ridley for him. I don't believe he's going to be good. If he's bad, then if Levis is bad, then the next guy has Calvin Ridley, a draft pick. Maybe they finally use a first-round pick on a quarterback, or they're the landing spot for the next veteran that is, changing teams or moving on, something like that. So Ridley's deal, I don't hate it. I don't hate the deal, but I'll tell you what, you know who the most excited person in the National Football League was that Calvin Ridley got this deal? Was basically every other eligible for an extension wide receiver. Look at this list of wide receivers that can sign extensions. Justin Jefferson, who's one of the best wide receivers in football. CeeDee Lamb, who also has a claim to be one of the best wide receivers in football. T. Higgins. Jamar Chase, maybe one of the best wide receivers in football. Amon-Ra St. Brown, clearly a top 10 guy. Brandon Ayuk, right there in the conversation as a top 10 guy. He was phenomenal this year. Ayuk was incredible this year. And Nico Collins was really good this year. Like, I know we watched him. We're all Texans fans. We watched the games. Like, we watched Nico Collins be really good. But when you start actually digging in and diving into where Nico Collins was on a lot of these statistical categories, I don't talk for a living or anything. He's 8th in receiving yards amongst receivers that played most of the season. He's 7th in yards per reception. He's top 10 when it comes to touchdowns. He obviously has the big play ability. He can catch stuff and make it go when it's like, hey, throw him a short one and just have something pop off for him. He doesn't turn the football over once he gets the ball in his hands. I think what I was trying to say there a second ago was yak. He's got yak ability. So Nico Collins is going to be expensive. Now, you look at what Calvin Ridley has put together, and over the past couple of years, Calvin Ridley has not been that good. Obviously, the season where he walked away in Atlanta, he was suspended for a year, and then he's right over 1,000 yards this year for the Jaguars with 8 touchdowns. He played all the games. It's like, that's a pretty good season. He's obviously got another 1,000-yard season under his belt. But if you're Nico Collins, you look around and, yes, it's his first healthy and super productive season of his career, but he had more yards than Calvin Ridley by a good margin. He was more explosive than Calvin Ridley. He was more reliable than Calvin Ridley. He was better with the ball in his hands than Calvin Ridley. Like, if you're Nico Collins, what Calvin Ridley got, 492, that's the absolute floor of the conversation if you want to talk about an extension right now, if you're Nico Collins. Now, obviously, if you want to, go back and forth with the Texans, cut them a little bit of a deal because they're negotiating with you a year early, that could certainly be your guest. Be my guest. Be my guest. Lupe, look. You asked the question once. I'll get to it. I promise. So Nico Collins, if I went to the negotiating table right now, I'd be asking for 4,100. I'm better than Calvin Ridley if I'm Nico Collins and I'm having that conversation. I'd ask for 4 and 100 million. Would the Texans do that? I don't know. I don't know if they do that right now. I would sure that they would want a little bit of back and forth. But if Calvin Ridley's worth $23 million a year in average annual value, Nico Collins is worth more. So what is that more? Is it 23 and a half? Is it 23 and a half for 94 million? Is it 24 for 96 million? I got to imagine you'd love to get to the $100 million number if you're Nico Collins and you're his agents. And by the way, if it's not necessarily Justin Jefferson or CD Lamb, but like T. Higgins, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Brandon Ayuk, if those guys signed extensions, A, I feel like they would all be higher than Calvin Ridley's extension, and B, that adds to the the conversation about, hey, this is where the money is at wide receiver. This is what you need to spend to get an elite wide receiver, and that's what I am. I'm Nico Collins. I'm an elite wide receiver. So it'll be interesting. Nick Caserio did not seem like he was scared to negotiate with Nico Collins and come up with a contract extension for Nico Collins. So I'm not worried about Nico Collins' contract because if he plays this year and balls out, the Texans should be happy to pay him. And oh, by the way, if he plays this year and balls out, you franchise tag him and then have the conversation with him as a franchise tagged player, right? But this also, if you're worried about Nico Collins long-term, it's one of the deepest wide receiver drafts in recent memory. It's one of the deepest wide receiver drafts in recent memory. So you could go out there, you get a wide receiver, and for at least 1 or 2 years, you got Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and that rookie, and then you see where it goes from there. So that's one of those things where if they want to do the deal now, I certainly would understand trying to get the deal done. If they want to do a deal a little bit later down the road and wait for him to prove it one more time, I certainly would understand that as well. Skyro asked a good question. I want to get to it because it's two of my favorite players. If Byron Murphy and Quinyon Mitchell are at 23, do the Texans take the DT or the cornerback? Between these two players, I would prefer Quinyon Mitchell, and I believe they would prefer Quinyon Mitchell. And here's why. That gives you long-term stability at the cornerback spot, and you could find a body and some defensive tackles a little bit later on. Byron Murphy's great, and he's a really impressive player, and they obviously have a lack at defensive tackle right now. Quinyon Mitchell is special. He has the potential to be one of the best cornerbacks in football. He is special. If he's there with Murphy, I would go with Quinyon Mitchell. Now, to get to the question about the cap space, I think a couple people already answered it for him. And Noah, I see. I'll get to you in just a second here. This is Texans cap. If you don't follow him, you need to follow him. Now, again, all right, it includes Malik Collins' trade. It excludes a couple of signings. So Boyd, Davis, King, David Sharp, and Tommy Townsend. So projected cap space right now, about 21. You chop off a little bit more. For those contracts that aren't done yet. So, somewhere between 10 and 18 with my dirty math there. With my Texas Tech University math. Somewhere around there. So that's where the cap space is. I want to get to some of the comments here in the comment section, but also want to get to the lives. If you want to jump in, Noah's been on before in the lives. Noah, what do you got for us, man? Fire away.
Yeah, what's up, Cody? How you doing?
What's up, man? I'm doing great.
I know this is a little off topic, but I wanted to talk about the draft for a second.
Sure.
Obviously, I feel like Nick has something in store at DT, whether it's Armstead, Barnett, Rankins, bringing back someone. One receiver that I've been studying recently and I really like is South Carolina Xavier Legette. Do you know much about him? Because I mean, when I see his highlights, I'm very intrigued by him.
Is there a player that you see when you watch Leggett, when you think about how physical he is and how he can do a lot of different stuff?
I think of Nico and DK. That's what I think of when I see him.
So he's getting a lot of comparisons to Deebo Samuel. Put the ball in his hands, however you can get the ball in his hands. Line him up inside, line him up outside, toss him the ball in the backfield if you have to. Big physical guy. Maybe the consistency is not quite there right away, but that would be something that he's a really unique player for, say, third wide receiver. It might be tough to, throw him in there with the ones and the two, the ones if he was the first or second wide receiver, but he's a unique guy for that third wide receiver spot for sure. And Leggett absolutely should be on the radar for the Texans.
Would you possibly trade up in the second round for him or any of those other guys or no?
No, I don't think so. I don't there's enough wide receivers that I would not move for a wide receiver in the second round. If they wanted to move for a wide receiver in the first round because they felt really strongly about one of those guys or one of the top three guys started to fall, I'd be okay with that. But there's enough guys, and I see some people in the chat saying Malachi Corley. Corley's another guy that gets Deebo comparisons. He's a yak monster. Steve Smith, the former Panthers and Ravens wide receiver, calls him the Yak King in this draft class.
There's a lot of yak guys in here.
Yeah, so like Corley is a guy that, there's going to be options at the back end of round 2, the start of round 3, and even the back end of round 3 that you wouldn't miss. I wouldn't move around in the second round for a wide receiver.
Yeah, I don't think there's really a need to sign a wide receiver right now at the moment. I mean, if you want to bring another veteran in, I don't know, but you probably have to cut Woods. But I think the draft is probably the best option.
I mean, look, if Nick Caserio wanted to cook up a Hollywood Brown deal for 1 year and a few $1 million, and he's the guy that is the speedster, the burner that takes the top off of things, you can do a whole lot worse than Hollywood Brown trying to rebuild his value for a year. But yeah, I tend to lean that you've got your vets if you want them in Woods and Brown. You've got some young guys who have a little experience in Mechie and Hutchinson. It would be nice to throw a young guy in there and just kind of mix it up and kind of push everybody to be a little bit better.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cody.
No, I appreciate you jumping in, man. Good stuff. Look at some of these comments here. Nothing really popping over in. Okay, so actually a potential safety came off the market because he never really hit the market. Tom Pelissero is reporting Harrison Smith, the 35-year-old safety from the Vikings, restructured his contract. He's staying in Minnesota. That would have been a guy I'd have gone after if he hit free agency, but he's not hitting free agency. I thought maybe they were going to cut him, but I guess not. Loki. If Quinyon Mitchell, the Toledo cornerback, started to fall in the draft, would we trade up to go get him? I'd think about it. I would think about it. I truly believe, guys, I truly believe he's the best cornerback in this class. I feel like he's one of the best cornerback prospects in recent memory. He gives me Derek Stingley vibes. I've called him Group of 5 Derek Stingley. He played at Toledo. He didn't play against the most impressive competition. He's really good. He's throwback. He's old school. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't talk trash. He's quiet. He's soft-spoken. He goes to work. One of my favorite stories of him is from the Athletic Profile about him. Quinyon Mitchell was going to change his number to a single-digit number before his final year at Toledo. After he had decided to stay at Toledo, after SEC teams came with hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to get him to transfer to the SEC, he stayed at Toledo. He's going to try to change his number, and his grandma called him and said, or he called his grandma to ask her about it, and she said, I think he's 27. She said, 27's been good to you. Why would you change that? And so he went back and told his coach, actually, coach, I can't change my number. I'm going to stay loyal to 27, and he stayed loyal to Toledo. Seemingly great human being, very excited for his NFL journey, would do anything to have him on the Texans basically, but also end up on a team where I feel like I wouldn't feel dirty cheering for him, if he ended up on the Texans. So, all right, couple comments here. Pass on Mike Williams. He's always injured. Yeah, Mike Williams very, very stuck into one style of wide receiver and offense. So you want maybe a tiny bit more versatility than Mike Williams bring. Yeah, I feel like just yesterday Harrison Smith got drafted, but at the same time, he's also been around like forever. Forever. Rick, who is a very loyal Houston football supporter. I want Curl from Washington, better than Simmons and younger too. Now, you shut your mouth, Rick. He's not better than Justin Simmons. He is a lot younger, though. 24 years old, I believe, is Cameron Curl, and was thought to have a really expensive and interested market, but I haven't seen anything on Curl, who played for the Commanders last year in the past few seasons, a former 7th-round pick. I haven't seen anything on him. Would you consider Brock Bowers at this point if he slides for some reason? Yeah, you have to, right? I wouldn't trade up for him, but if he's sitting there at 20, I'll tell you what, he's sitting there at 23, you could probably get a king's ransom for him. You probably wouldn't have to, you could probably turn him into some really nice draft picks. Really nice draft picks. Do people still think fire Nick? I wonder if those people actually meant fire up the stove and cook up a fantastic couple of days of free agency. I'm giving those people an out on that. P. Nasty, Cody, how much longer until the uniform is released? Week of the draft is my understanding. So, why my hair look like that? Week of the draft is my understanding when things are coming out. I am chasing down some clarification. On when exactly you should be able to see and get and some of that stuff from a new uniform standpoint. Blake Howland with the very generous super chat. Blake, thank you. He says, been watching you since the start of last offseason as you become far and away my favorite source of Texans information. You deserve this after how much work you have been putting in since the start of free agency. Blake, thank you so much, man. That is very kind, very generous. The super chats are very helpful. They help me keep this thing going and do these things, and I really enjoy doing this. It's cool to come on here and talk ball with you guys in the middle of the day, at 5 o'clock, at night when we do the late night ones. It's great. Blake, thank you so much for the super chat. That is extremely generous, and the words are very kind, and the words mean as much to me as the super chat itself does. So thank you. Thank you very much. That is great. Man, thank you. We had over 600 people in here. We had 1,500 on Monday for the 6-hour one. We had some big numbers yesterday. Let's chat, man. Let's chat. Let's talk football. I love this stuff, man. I love this stuff. I'm gonna pour everything into this, covering this team, because you guys deserve it. You guys deserve to have somebody that covers this team with reckless abandon. Is that what I want to say? Covers this team with. I'm not a poet by any means, but look, I love this. I love covering this team. I love talking about this team. I love this. So you guys deserve this. And I'm going to bring you as much freaking content as you possibly can handle. Michael says, dude, day one was stressful. Yeah. Day one was stressful. Day one was very stressful. Very stressful. Devin, man, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. Devin's a loyal watcher of the videos. And he's very generous in the super chats too, man. Thank you, Devin. I appreciate that. I got a better chance of saying Foley's last name than yours. I appreciate that, Devin. Jake's got a super chat with a question. Trade our first and late pick for Carolina or Washington's 2 top of the second round picks, get a wide receiver and cornerback, and still have our second. Okay, so you're saying go from 23. You're saying go from 23 to, like, Carolina's got 33 and 39. So then the Texans would have 33, 39, and 59 in the second round. I would think about that. Do we want to do the math here live? Let's do the draft value chart math here live on that. So 23 overall is worth 760 points. 33 and 39 is worth 580 and 510. So yeah, by value, you would do that. The tough part about doing that type of deal is you lose the fifth-year option on the first-round pick. Now, obviously, if the guy's good, who cares if you have the fifth-year option or not? You're going to extend him. If you could go to 33 and then jump back into 32 just to get that fifth-year option, that'd be cool. But, Jake, that's not a bad idea. But my thing would be if a guy's worth the Panthers or Washington trading up into the first, he might be worth just drafting, depending on who that guy is. He might just be worth drafting. So, Tiff wants to know, should we be afraid of the Titans offense now? No. Daniil Hunter's going to eat Will Levis's lunch. Mr. Farrow, are you and Landry cooking up a show? We do a lot of stuff. We do stuff on his channel, do some stuff on my channel. We got some fun stuff in the on the whiteboard, trying to put it together and figure it out for draft time. Let's hit that subscribe button, y'all. Let's get Cody over 6,000 followers. Yeah, that'd be awesome. I would appreciate that. I did change the rules. You got to be subscribed to get in the chat. You could be subscribed any amount of time. You just got to be subscribed to chat. I think that's a fair trade-off, don't you think? Sumo asks, any info on the new tackle? David Sharp is his name. He barely's played in the offense, primarily special teams. He had one offensive snap last year, according to Pro Football Focus. So don't know a lot about him. Don't know that he's the answer at swing tackle, but something to think about it. Certainly something to think about, and who or why he's on the team, what role he could play for the team. Drunken Farmer asks, possibility of Simmons? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's a possibility. Justin Jaramillo, yo, Cody, where's the Pepsi Zero? So I had Pepsi Zero with breakfast this morning. I'm in the Diet Mountain Dew today. I like to keep it lighter in the afternoons. Any new potential signings? I feel like most of us are just kind of waiting for Eric Armstead, just waiting for that, waiting for him to pop up. And gosh darn it, Crumpler. He retweeted a Lonnie Johnson tweet from 2022 where he was tweeting at Quandre Diggs. So I got a little excited. Gosh darn it. Got a little excited. Wiggles Ming. Why are so many national heads telling me the Texans will draft the offensive tackle in the first round? Because they don't follow this team. Because they don't pay attention. That's why. If they draft an offensive tackle in the first round, I'll be big time sad, big time mad. That would make zero sense. I was really disappointed. A couple of guys that I really like have mocked that. Chad Reuter at NFL.com was a guy that mocked that. I didn't love it. I love his stuff because he does 7-round mocks. And then Kuiper mocked that. And I was like, come on, Mel. But no, they're not getting – I'd be shocked beyond everything if they drafted an offensive tackle. I would not like that either. Devin says, you're my favorite Houston Texans commentator. Landry slightly behind. Got to support the cause. Devin, I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. You're very loyal. And you're in a lot of these videos. You're in the comment section. It's great. James E. says, I think George Fant to Seattle's a bigger loss than one might realize. He filled in pretty well for our injured tackles and actually did a good job in the playoffs. Now, I wrote about this at Houston Football, James, which, by the way, you can subscribe to Houston Football in the link in the description. down below, $7 a month. We'll make it worth your time. We'll make it worth your money and worth your time, spending the time on there. Fant was really good last year, filling in for Titus Howard and filling in for Laramie Tunsil a couple of times when Tunsil got banged up here or there. And he would have been one of the best backup tackles in all of football. But he's going to Seattle. He'll probably get starter opportunities in Seattle. So it was a pipe dream to bring him back. Bindi says, hey, Cody. David White, Stoots, any info on when the draft party tickets are going to become available yet? All right, let me go ahead. I'll get one of my little tiny notebooks out. Just here, I'll show you a little bit about. So this was me at the Senior Bowl. Everybody's I get rosters, so I just write down their numbers. I don't know if you can see that. So it's like 12 drop, and I just write down sometimes I can't even read it. This was from the first day. It was Rice through contact touchdown. Rice again, all caps. It's Brendan Rice from the Senior Bowl. So when I write my notes for training camp or I write my notes for, like when I go to the Senior Bowl and stuff, I just throw their numbers in there and try to figure out and remember what I was saying last time. All right, so we want a timeline. We want a timeline on when the new uniform stuff is coming out. Maybe I can get an official announcement on that. So a date on that, and then draft party info. Okay, I'll make sure I get that. David, appreciate the super chat. Thank you. H-Town TD 2000, given all the upgrades and changes, and let's say one of your mock drafts holds true, what do you think win-loss record looks like given our rigorous schedule? Thank you for all the insight. I'd tell you 12 wins. Defense could be top 5 if you get some luck with the health. At safety and offensive line, I'm feeling 12 wins right now. 12 wins in the conversation for one of the top spots there in the AFC. In the conversation for 2 home playoff games, I'm going 12 wins. Now, obviously, I got to see how the rest of free agency plays out, make sure everybody gets healthy through training camp, yada, yada, yada. But 12 wins. David H-Town, TD 2000, thank y'all so much. Thank y'all so much. Jorge asks, all this free agency, I can't wait for the draft. You'll be attending the actual draft or the draft party. So not going to Detroit. I'm not going to Detroit this year. I've been in Vegas and I've been in Kansas City for the past couple of drafts, but not going to go to Detroit. Still figuring out exactly the draft plans. Simmons or Armstead? Oh, man. I'll go Simmons. I would tell you DeMeco Ryans will go Armstead. I'll go Simmons. I'll tell you DeMeco Ryans will go Armstead. He loves the defensive lineman. This is a funny question. M. Gentles 3. Can we fix Julian Blackmon? Wouldn't mind finding out. Is Beck still with us? Yes, Andrew Beck still on the team, fullback/tight end. If any, what would be your last signings to finish free agency? I mean, if you could figure out Armstead and a safety, that'd be great. Armstead and Quandre Diggs. Something like that. All right. Simmons and get a DB, just stock that secondary up. Yeah, certainly. Indy underrated defensive tackle to keep an eye out on. Not in free agency, but Braden Fiskey from Florida State. You need to pay attention to him. He's going to be a monster. Athletic freak, violence. Violence is the name of his game. Yeah, that's the guy you got to, pay attention to. Devin asks, was Fant under contract? Was he a free agent? If so, how much did we clear in cap? Do you know? Fant was an unrestricted free agent. He'd signed a 1-year deal after training camp got going last year for I think $2 million. So he was a free agent. So his money was already accounted for. He did not get traded. He left in free agency. Thank you, Devin. What do you make of Colin Cowturd saying Trevor Lawrence is better than Stroud? He's wrong. He's wrong. That's what I make of it. Ben D, I appreciate you with the super chat. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much. Am I the only one who likes Grayland Arnold? Maybe. Texans let him become a free agent. Leon, is it possible to get both Simmons and Armstead? It's possible, but both those guys would have to work with you. Both those guys would have to work with you. Rock WP says, Cody, I know you're a big advocate for trading back in the first round, but could you name 3 realistic players you would stay at pick 23 for? Okay, so I'll leave Byron Murphy out of that conversation because I don't believe there's hardly any chance that Byron Murphy is going to be there at 23. So I'll leave him out of that conversation. But Latu, the defensive end from UCLA, just to continue to add to that defensive line situation. I would not be in love with Johnny Newton, the defensive tackle from Illinois, but I could certainly see the team being willing to stick there and pick him. Nate Wiggins, the corner from Clemson, if they're comfortable with the size. And then Darius Robinson, probably an overdraft at 23 to some people. I feel like Darius Robinson would be a monster for this team. So, again, most of those players I just mentioned could probably be had in a trade back, but you could also guarantee you get them at 23. P. Nasty, Cody, I'm stuck in traffic. Can you explain the time-space continuum and relative gravity theory in a way that I can understand? Thanks. The salary cap is fake, and so is that. We're living in a simulation, and right now it's a really good simulation if you cheer for the Houston Texans. That's all I got for you. Science was not my strong suit. I avoided science like the plague in high school and college. Like the plague. I took very few science classes. Low-key, does Armstead pull a Russell Wilson? Still owed $26 million in guaranteed money in our cap hit our cap for 1.2 and still make his money for 1 year. Maybe, if somebody's offering a good contract, you take the good contract multi-year and you take the stability. If you're him, you'd hate to sign a 1-year deal for cheap, be hurt, and then you never see any of that money again. If someone's offering you real money for a couple of years, it's probably a prudent decision to take it. Take the multi-year deal. Would you be disappointed with a Rankins re-sign instead of Armstead? No, not at all. Disappointed? No. Do I prefer Armstead to Rankins? Maybe a little bit, but Rankins is a very nice player. Very nice player. I mean, he's probably one of the better free agents available when it comes to defensive linemen right now. You still like edge at 23 with Hunter added? Well, Latu is a 4-year guy, 5 years with the first-year option. Can't ever have enough edge guys. Imagine if the edge players were Danico Autry, Daniil Hunter, Will Anderson, and Latu from UCLA. You literally are massacring the tackles every play. Everyone stays fresh. You protect yourself from injury. I would definitely think about edge. I don't think they're set by any means at some of these spots. Jake Johnson asks, given Tank Dell's size and the possibility of getting injured again, do you think another stud wide receiver at 23 is warranted? Certainly. I had somebody that is in the scouting world today say that he doesn't think it's out of the question they would trade up for a wide receiver. Now, this wasn't him reporting. This wasn't inside info. He's just kind of putting how the Texans operate, how the draft might fall, smashing those two together. But sticking at 23, Brian Thomas Jr. is there. Maybe a little early for Ladd McConkey, the Georgia wide receiver. Maybe a little early for Troy Franklin, but Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU, Adonai Mitchell from Texas. 23 wide receivers are certainly in play. A couple more comments. David, I see you. Get to you in just a second. Let's see. All the deals are great. Mixon at $6 million, playing for a contract. All 2-year deals are as follows. Year 1, playing great because you're grateful. Year 2, playing for a contract. Yeah, I like that. Johnny asked, "Do we know if Dylan Horton's going to be ready to play this year?" I do not know the answer to that. Can I let me pub a friend real quick. I want to throw this up, and David, I'll get to you in just a second. John Harris. So John Harris, who he works for Texans Radio, is Texans sideline reporter, but John Harris also has his own website called Football Takeover. And John Harris, to me, is one of the most fun guys to talk draft with. He just dropped a scouting report against or about Tavondre Sweat. So Football Takeover, I think the subscription is $2.99 a month. John goes in depth. He breaks down film. He does a great job at Football Takeover. He's one of my favorite people in the business. He's an incredibly nice human being, and he's incredibly smart when it comes to football. He's encyclopedic knowledge of football, and he loves scouting players. And it's worth your time. Check out John Harris, footballtakeover.com. David, what do you got for us, man? Fire away.
Hey, what's up, Stoots? How you doing, man?
I'm living good, man.
Good. Well, one question I just had to ask. With us getting Mixon and DP, the only other running back, are we A.J. Dillon maybe? Or is he even still on the market? Because we don't trust DP unless Joe Mixon can come in with the veteran status yet and maybe revive him.
I would say this.
How do you feel about that?
I would think, David, I appreciate the question. I'll answer that real quick, and then I want to get to some super chats. I appreciate you jumping in. Look, they could certainly use another veteran at the running back spot. They certainly could. A guy that's maybe a hammer, that's a more physical guy, a bruiser, that could, handle some of that short yardage stuff, or a guy that's just a speedy, dynamic guy. It's more of a catch the ball first type of running back. So they could certainly use another veteran at the running back spot. They also could, if the running back room heading into camp is Joe Mixon, rookie, veteran who's out there right now, and Damian Pierce, and a special teams forward running back, you can figure that out in training camp really well. You can figure that out. So, and there's still a couple of names that would be maybe worth a flyer, or he's a veteran, or just kind of in there. I mean, J.K. Dobbins' injury history is so tough. It's hard to bet on him. But Kyle Caesar, Hail Caesar, salad dressing. He has a super chat. Thank you, Caesar. Kyle. Cody, appreciate your hard work and responsiveness both on Twitter and here. Am I wrong for thinking Nick should have got more for Collins? No. Could he have gotten more? Sure. How does he go about getting more? Does he have to wait? Did he think maybe something was imminent? Did he need to clear that money right away? I don't know. Yeah, you're right. Is there a lot of difference between a 6th round pick and a 7th round pick? Not really. But would you have liked to just got max value for the guy? Yes. But let's see what he cooks up here. Malik Collins by itself looks like a bad deal for the Texans. Malik Collins by itself is a bad deal for the Texans optically, but Malik Collins getting traded leads to something else. So I don't know exactly what that is, but it leads to something else. Devin weighs in. It's still my notion that our draft picks debut our new uniforms. Just my pipe dream, though. I believe you will see them the week of the draft, and the new draft picks will hold up the new uniforms. Yes, Devin. I think you're on to something. Again, I will try to nail down a official date of when you will see the jerseys. If we can't get Armstead, do you think we'll try for Simmons? You're great, man. Appreciate your work. Thank you, Mob Squad 1914. I don't know that they're in on Simmons. It might just be too expensive right now. Simmons is sort of like a dream player for as far as free agency goes. Johnny dropped the Byron Murphy scout too. John Harris scouting reports is like when people who were growing up in the 70s and 80s when Playboy shows up. That's how excited I get. I think Armstead and a defensive tackle was their priority. That's their priority. If they can make that happen, they need a starter at tackle. They don't need a starter at safety. They got 2 starters. They need a starter at tackle. Mob Squad, thank you, man. John Jones has a super chat. Thank you so much for the super chat. Who do you think Caserio will aim with the rest of the cap? If you could guess, yeah, it's defensive tackle. It's defensive tackle, and it's probably a depth spot here or there. So Armstead's probably the guy that makes the most sense. Aaron Wilson, we've talked about it here on the stream. Aaron Wilson reporting that there's interest in Armstead, and maybe there's some mutual interest there. Certainly would think it makes sense for Armstead. Play with D'Amico, play with some ballers on the defensive line. Armstead's, I would think, probably their priority right now. And if it's not Armstead, that position. So somebody that they like for the defensive tackle spots. John, I appreciate the super chat, man. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right, couple more. Oh, come on, stop it. Might be part of the side deal that sends Bosa to Houston. Come on now. Don't tease me. That ain't happening. Michael Knight, draft scenario, trade with the Cardinals for the 4th pick. Come on. Give them our first and a wide receiver to get Harrison Jr. at 4, maybe give Arizona another pick as well. To move that far, you would need to trade multiple first-round picks. Multiple first-round picks. You came in too cheap. A.D. Mitchell in round 1, Braden Fiske in round 2. I'll take that draft right now. Do we save money in the cap by trading Malik Collins? Yeah, a couple $1 million. Couple $1 million. How do you feel about the rule change proposal from the Eagles? So I saw this pop up. I haven't read the rule changes yet. Let's see what these rule changes are that you're talking about here, B. Permit a team to maintain possession of the ball after a score by substituting one offensive play, 4th and 20 from the kicking team's 20-yard line, for an onside kickoff attempt. I like that. That's the XFL rule for the onside kick. Teams can convert 4th and 20s. Just ask Davis Mills and Jordan Akins. I would tell you that they probably convert 4th and 20 more than they convert onside kicks in the National Football League. Permit a coach or replay official inside of 2 minutes to challenge any foul that has been called. That's not bad. That's not a bad one from the Colts. I'm in favor of both of these. Protect the club's ability to challenge a third ruling following one successful challenge. Okay. Sure. Eliminate the first touch spot after receiving team possesses the ball. I think that's on special teams. The Eagles always are proposing stuff. I'm in favor of these first two. I do not care about the other two. You have a better chance to get the ball back. You have a better chance to get the ball back when it's 4th and 20 than an onside kick. I think there was 2 onside kicks all year, or two unexpected onside kicks. Something. Sunny Digital, sign me up for Adonai. There's good depth at corner and D-line in the draft, where I'm cool to take a receiver in the first example. T. Sweat and Kamari Lassiter from Georgia. Go H-Town. Yeah, look, Tavondre Sweat in the second or third, along with Kamari Lassiter in the second or third, with Adonai Mitchell in the first. Woo! That's sick. That's sick nasty. Chiefs would never not be on offense. Yeah, they'd find themselves a couple ways to put Mahomes on the field, get a couple calls. Nick Crawford, 4th and 20, would be fine except when a flag's thrown. It's 50-50. Yeah, the flags, I do look, defensive holding or pass interference and stuff like that, given the ball to the other team, maybe the officials would be a little bit wary of making that decision, making that call. So, low-key, starting to think nothing's going to happen tonight. I'm starting to think the same way. That's okay, though. If something happens later tonight when the stream is over here, which it'll be over here in a few minutes, we'll have it covered for you on the YouTube page. We'll have it covered for you on Houston football as well. The Midnight ASCast has Justin Simmons signed yet. He has not, and everyone was sad about Barkley, and I was hurt when I saw Luvu sign with Washington. Yeah, I'll take Hunter and Mixon and Azeez Al-Shire versus Barkley, Luvu, and something else. I think Shaq Griffin probably burned the bridge here. I don't think so. Unspoken Films, I don't think so. Okay. So, housekeeping. Houston football. In the link in the description down below. Houston football, where I do all my writing, www.houfootball.com. www.houfootball.com is where you can find all my writing on the Texans. Just $7 a month. There will be free content on there as well. So you don't want to miss out on that. Also, some housekeeping. Underdog Fantasy, the best way to play fantasy. The Pick'em format, so easy. You're predicting higher or lower on predicted stats for players. You're putting them together in one entry. You could 20 times your money in just one entry. You're going to get 2 times your initial deposit when you sign up with my code Stoots. That's STOOTS. STOOTS is the code. The link in the description down below will sign you up automatically. With that code, if it's your first time signing up, you're going to get 2 times your first deposit. Please support Underdog Fantasy. They do a great job supporting the channel. And I know you're saying, well, it's not football season. How am I playing fantasy? Throw you some basketball stuff in there. Throw you some baseball stuff in there. Heck, it's never too early to draft a fantasy team. Underdog Fantasy lets you go ahead and draft fantasy teams for next year. Now that you know where some of these guys are going to be on some of these teams, and please always game responsibly as well. So Houston football, link in the description down below. Follow on Twitter at Cody_Stoots. Or X, or whatever you call it these days. I call it Twitter still. Couple more comments, then we'll wrap it up here. Absolution. The free agent I'm glad we have not retained is Perryman. Absolute liability and coverage. Not great. Al-Shire and Christian Harris have that stuff squared away now. Given our last game was a loss to the Ravens and all we've done is change Singletary for Mixon, what else does the offense need to win that game? They need the defense to play better, and they need the offensive line to play better. You need the defense to play better, and you need the offensive line to play better. Manny Martinez, your channel is going to blow up. You've done such a good job covering our Texans. Thanks. Everyone liked the vid. Manny, thank you for the kind words, man. Thank you. You guys with the thumbs up, the subscriptions to the channel, the likes, the comment section. I love it all. I appreciate it all so much. I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful for all of it. And it helps the channel. It helps me. It's what I do. And it allows us to have these fun, evening streams talking about the Houston Texans. Big spicy boy with the super chat. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. You guys, if you've been around the streams or you've picked up on it this week, if this is your first week here, we finish the streams the same way each and every time. Each and every time. This is my hope for you. This is my charge to you as well. I want you to eat good. I want you to sleep good. I want you to be good. And I can't wait until we talk Texans again soon. Thank you, everybody. We'll have some more content for you here on the channel, Houston football, the Twitter, so much more stuff. Appreciate it. Y'all are fantastic. Y'all make this a dream every day. Every day. Eat good, sleep good, be good. We'll talk Texans again soon. Thank you, everybody.